I'm Darren Ng. I'm the Executive Director of LAVA. Thank you for joining us. I'll kill some time while I'm still watching the numbers go up. Tell you a little bit about LAVA. I'm relatively new as the Executive Director. I've got a little bit new of a vision. So if you thought you knew LAVA 6 months ago, we're definitely a different organization.
Thank you so much, Kala, and thanks to Global Lava for hosting this event. So several years ago, I was approached by one of the companies here, and they wanted to understand India better, and they asked me, as is typical of an aerospace company, to write a long and complicated proposal about it. And then they came back a couple of months later, say, well, actually, we found another solution. We worked with this large university, not Loyola Marymount, Kala, another one, not in the local area. And they said, we are going to use their resources. And I forgot all about it. A few months later, I get a call from the Thunderbirds Graduate School in Phoenix, Arizona, saying this unnamed aerospace company wants to run an India program, and would you be kind enough to be able to do it for us? And the point I'm trying to make is that most people in the United States see me and my company as the India expert, and no matter where you turn, it will end up coming back to Amritt or to Gunjan one way or the other. For a more formal introduction, I'm a graduate of the IIT Kanpur, the Indian Institute of Technology at Kanpur, which was set up during President Kennedy's time by Caltech and MIT and 7 other American universities. I was also the president of their Global Alumni Association for a number of years. I've written a book on doing business in India, but my day job is really helping large and small companies to understand India. And it's really done mostly in the form of stories and interpretation and nuances. So I'm happy to get into that as this program proceeds.
So our first question, going to Gunjan, is what a US company needs to have ready domestically for the cross-border growth?
Yeah, so first of all, let me be clear. If you look for the India-US border on a map, you're not going to find it, right? And yet the two countries are as close together today as you can imagine. When I started Amritt more than 15 years ago, the bilateral trade was less than $20 billion. India's trade was less than Belgium's trade with the United States. And today, that number is $150 billion, okay? So if I get on a plane to fly to India, it's a Boeing plane. I go to the airport, I pass through these rapid scan machines made by Deepak Chopra's company here in Southern California. I land at Delhi airport, and Delhi airport's backup generators are powered by Kohler, which is a Wisconsin-based company. My employees in India use Hewlett-Packard computers. They wear Levi's jeans. They drink Coke and Pepsi, and their favorite snack is a product called Kurkure. And you say, why am I talking about Kurkure? Well, Kurkure is owned by Frito-Lay. Okay? And what I'm trying to say is that the average Indian encounters an American company or an American product many, many times in the day. And of course, when Facebook bought WhatsApp a few years ago for whatever, $20 billion or so, most of WhatsApp users were in India. Most Americans hadn't even heard of WhatsApp. Okay? So every day, there is a strong interaction between the two countries. Some of you might know that the CEO of IBM is an Indian American, the CEO of Microsoft and Google, and even for Albertson stores is an Indian American. Okay? I'm saying all of this because many people still think of the old India, you know, from 20 plus years ago. And there's much, much more interaction than simply the guy or gal who answers your tech support question when you call an 800 number, okay? India's economy today is among the top 5, really only Japan, United States, China, and Germany are larger. India's economy was supposed to cross France and the UK this year or so, okay? And so there's plenty of opportunity to want to do business there. And the old paradigms have changed. So if you were talking to me 5 years ago, and you'll find this in many articles and books, that before you go to India, think about Canada and Mexico and Europe and Latin America. And at the end of that whole process, you think of India. Well, I can tell you that many of our clients in the last year have been companies who have chosen to go to India as their first international market. Okay, we are currently helping a number of startups who are in that kind of mode, where they are looking at India as their very first global entry. And this can be in the space of medical devices, where India has unique needs. This can be in the space of digital health. This can be in the space of telecom, where there's a huge transformation going on today with what's happening with 4G, and India's largest petrochemical company turning itself into a telecom company with over $20 billion of investment that have gone to India during the pandemic. During the pandemic, Reliance India has managed to garner over $20 billion of American money. So big changes are happening that sometimes don't get reported in the same way that you might expect to see with other kinds of activities. So if you are a startup or a growing company and you want to think about India, I think it's not premature to look at it at any stage. Today, the political alignment between the two countries has never been stronger. You know, when I started my company, I used to say India is not China and India is not like China. Well, every 5 years I say that yet again, but the meaning of that sentence changes. So today, India is not China because the Washington administration is not focused on destroying the trade with India. It's actually focused on increasing the trade with India. And so you have the Secretary of Commerce, the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, and President Donald Trump having visited India in the last couple of years. Okay. And so India is very much the darling of the of the Washington establishment today. The whole name of the Pacific region now has been renamed to the Indo-Pacific region. And that's a very specific jab by the Washington DC establishment at China. Okay, so good or bad, that is kind of what is happening. And if you're looking at India as an opportunity, there's never been a better time than now to do it. So in terms of preparing what you need to do, you just need to be ready that you can deal with international business. And then you should look at India. Not everybody is right for India, and India is not right for everybody. So don't let me leave you with the impression that everyone on this call should jump and go to India. At least half the people who come to us, we tell them, no, don't go to India. It's not right for you. You don't have to work with a person of Indian origin to be successful in India. I mean, much as I would be delighted that you only consider working with me, I have to be fair. This is not a sales pitch. There are Americans who understand India just as well as I do. You have to find them. And there are Indians who have no clue about India. Okay. Just because they were born in India and they came to this country, they may understand the US much better than they understand India. They go back only for vacations and they are clueless about India. Right? So you have to find someone whom you can trust, who understands India. The other important thing that I think I have seen as a marker of success for companies, regardless of how small or large they are, that the people dealing with India at the company must have a sense of humility and curiosity. And let me demonstrate that by an example. So one of my favorite clients was a guy named Ken. And we were in Delhi, in rush hour traffic in Gurgaon, which is a suburb of Delhi. And it was 5 or 5:30 when we were done with our last meeting. We were getting ready in our rented car with a chauffeur to go back to our hotel, and he said, no, I want to take public transport. I want to see how the Delhi metro feels like. Okay, and I think that was probably the most important decision he made while he was in India for the first week, because he really wanted to experience India as Indians do. And he probably learned more on that hour-and-a-half metro ride. I didn't go with him. One of my colleagues went with him just to kind of feel protective about him. But Ken did a fabulous thing by actually absorbing what was happening in India. I'll give you another example of my client, Mark, whose company I can name. They are the largest pistachio grower in the world, based right here in Southern California. And when Mark and I went to India, all of the pistachio distributors in India wanted to come to our hotel near Connaught Place in central New Delhi to meet us. And Mark and I decided, no, we were going to go into the depths of old Delhi in the narrow lanes where these companies were based and meet them at their place of business, which sometimes was as tiny as a little kiosk, but they might be doing $20 million a year of imports from that little kiosk. So these were very significant entrepreneurs, and they were amazed that we actually showed up in the July and June heat to visit them in their little places of business. But in the long term, that is what became a marker of success. And you see American almonds and California almonds and California pistachios all over India today. And a lot of this was based on the humility and curiosity of the early people who dealt with India. So I think those attributes are extremely important when you look at a faraway market such as India. And today there is a demand in India across many, many sectors, right? So it doesn't matter whether you are in consumer products, medical devices, health products, defense. India is the largest buyer of defense products in the world. And Boeing, Northrop, Lockheed, all of them have been extremely successful, as have many smaller companies. One of our clients made the small sights that go on the top of guns that the police and the Indian Army use. And it's a very small value item, relatively speaking, but a very important item for the success of the military and paramilitary and police forces in India. You also need to know why you are going to India. Is it the market? Is it for Indian talent? And is it for the supply chain? India is good at all three, okay? But you have to know what you're going for. We advised an education-related company, and they wanted Infosys as their first client. So we actually got them appointments with Infosys, Wipro, and TCS in Bangalore. And the CEO thought that he would impress them by saying that he could outsource the technology behind his company to these outfits. And I advised Dan, I said, don't even bring that up, because you're a 6-person company. And these guys are interested in technology deals that run into 20, 30, 40 million dollars. So by enticing them with outsourcing, you are actually insulting them rather than attracting them. Just focus on the product and service that you have to offer. And that's what will help you succeed. Another little story I have is from a famous company that I won't name. And they were presenting to the Indian government and a large group. On the very second slide of their presentation, I said they're sunk. And they're sunk for a very simple reason that most people don't realize. They showed a map of India. Okay. And I think, Kala, you know where I'm going with that. Okay. If you get your map of India from National Geographic or from the US government, and you show that in India, you're dead in the water right there. Because the Indian government and the Indian people imagine borders that don't exist. But those are the only legal borders that you can show in India. And if you're trying to sell a defense product and you show parts of India as belonging to Pakistan or China, and you're trying to sell to the Indian government, you might as well have shot yourself in the foot or the head. Okay. So you have to be careful about the sensitivities about the different cultures. And that's very important for success in India. I could give you mirror image stories about the United States, where we have our own sensitivities here, and maybe we can get into that during Q&A. But humility and curiosity are really important to succeed in India. So as they say in Washington, I will yield back most of my time to the Q&A session. I think Harshal and Smita have covered this extremely well. I would only clarify a couple of small points. Number one, RBI is the Reserve Bank of India, and it's similar to the Federal Reserve in the US, but it also has regulatory responsibilities. So foreign exchange control, foreign investment are somewhat regulated by the Reserve Bank of India. It is not based in New Delhi, the capital. It's actually headquartered for the most part in Mumbai, which is essentially the financial capital of India. The second thing I wanted to say is that sometimes things can happen extremely rapidly in India. And I'll give you one example of that. Again, going back to our pistachio client, they wanted, when they first entered India, Reliance was expanding its retail network. And Reliance said, we'd like to buy a container load for our store in Baroda. And I sent one of my employees, and they found an empty plot of land where they wanted to open this store. And my Indian team was continually surprised when I sent them on these missions. And he said, there's no way that by August 15th, which is India's Independence Day, that there'll be a functioning store here. Well, they underestimated Reliance, as so many other people have done. And sure enough, on August 13th, a fully functional store was there. And on August 15th, it was wide open. And right at the front of that store was a large display of wonderful pistachios. And it did extremely well. And in the long run, Reliance Retail and others became very good customers for our client. So India will continually surprise you. Sometimes it will disappoint you, but sometimes it could be in the other direction as well. And you just have to be ready. Again, if you're listening carefully, you can make this happen.
Is it insane to attack the subcontinent as a whole with India as a beachhead? And I will ask Gunjan to kind of answer that question.
Yeah. So I assume that this anonymous attendee, when they say the subcontinent as a whole with India as a beachhead, is talking about, Pakistan, Nepal, Sri Lanka, Bhutan, and, Bangladesh. Those are all interesting countries, but it's like saying if I want to enter the United States, should I think of, Guatemala and, the Central American countries, as part of that larger entity. India is the behemoth, the other countries there are much, much smaller. So occasionally it makes sense. We did have a wound management startup that started in Nepal because they could get regulatory approval for some initial clinical trials very quickly in Nepal. But for the most part, India is so much bigger than the other countries in that South Asian region that you really need to make your decision based on India. And sometimes, you certainly don't want to put Pakistan and India in the same bucket. I had a small Northern California company want to send a Pakistani American to sell defense products into India. And I said, you might as well, send, it's like throwing her into the lion's den. She's not going to come back with anything. So you have to be conscious of those issues about the local internal politics. India itself has a population larger than all of Europe. India has 23 languages, and they are more different from each other than, than French is from Italian, you know. So, when you think of India, if you're looking at the consumer market in India, you're really thinking about entering Europe rather than entering Germany, right? So, on the B2B side, that's not so much the case. But yeah, so attacking the subcontinent as a whole or even attacking India as a whole for most startups is unrealistic unless you are in the pure digital space, okay? Other than that, our medical device clients, our consumer product clients, typically they will either focus on one vertical segment in India or one product line out of their product lines, or one region. The population around the New Delhi metropolitan area, what they call the national capital region, is about 40 million people. That's about the population of Taiwan. So, you want to enter Delhi and Mumbai at the same time, that's as a startup going to consume a tremendous amount of your energy. Okay. So you have to be careful how big of the size of a bite of the apple you want to make. There are exceptions, like I said, where it makes sense to go with a national media campaign and a purely digital product. But those are rarer than other cases. Yeah, I can add a little bit to that. There is a strong appetite for better utilization of wind energy in India. Along the west coast of India, there are wind farms. In southern India, I visited an American company that was making the blades for the windmills in Chennai at an export zone. And I visited ITC, their paper factories. ITC is a company that sells cigarettes and owns hotels and many other properties. But at their paper factory in India, they were essentially wind powered through an off-site wind farm. So there is quite an appetite for alternate forms of energy. Now, whether there is an appetite to invest in an early stage startup that doesn't appear to have revenue, from an Indian entity, I think that's another question. And you really would have to look at strategic investors, companies in India that are already in that space. I think is where I would start because they may have an understanding of the market. If there's some special angle that would apply to India, then that would get them excited possibly. So, but if you just go to the average Indian investor, I think you're going to get a response, very similar to what you heard from Herschel, that this is not a space that they're focused on.
I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking one final question. How much does language, you mentioned 23, I just learned, I didn't realize there were 23 different languages in India. You know, it sounds a lot like, you know, Indonesia has a lot of different cultures with 17,000 different islands. How challenging is doing business with the language, or does everyone mostly kind of have a sense of English when you're going around?
I can take that if you want. So there's, for any question in India, there are two possible answers, and I'll give you both very quickly. So most business in India is conducted in English. Even the Indian government, which says Hindi is the official language, they will write their memos and letters in English and then translate them into Hindi and put the Hindi before the English.
I
Okay,
see.
that's typically what they do. Okay, now the rub is that people in India speak Indian English. They do not speak American English.
Ah,
Okay, and just as Churchill said, the United States and the UK are two countries divided by a common language. That very much applies to India. And there are
okay.
many words that you can hear in India that you will never hear in the United States. At the end of a document, for example, you might have something called an annexure. What in the world is an annexure? Well, it's an appendix,
Okay.
and so on. In my book, there's a whole glossary at the end that talks about Indian English. And on our website at Amritt, there is also the most popular Indian English dictionary. Now that can teach you the words, but it won't teach you the paragraphs and the sentences. So what I advise people is to watch this Disney movie called The $1 Million Arm. Uh, it has some very interesting scenes about how to succeed in India and how to fail. It's a wonderful, entertaining movie, but I use it in my India workshops quite a bit. Right? So first of all, the structure of the laws in India is very recognizable because it is based on the same British system of law that the United States law is based on. So unlike Japan and China, where their basic structure is very different, you don't have that issue, right? Secondly, the government of India does not systematically violate international protocols and intellectual property rights, as one other country, which I will not name, is known to do. Okay. Uh, Thirdly, if you do not have trust with your partners and the people you are doing business with, the contracts are really immaterial. Okay. If you have to go to court, even in this country, even here in California, if you have to go to court, you've already lost. Your lawyers and their lawyers have won. Okay. And that's true in India as well. Okay. Uh, the best I can do in terms of anecdote is to quote Rupert Murdoch when he spoke at the Milken conference a few years ago, at a time when he was married to Wendy Murdoch, a Chinese native, and he said that they had taken, twice they had gone to the Indian Supreme Court to insist on their rights, and both times the Indian Supreme Court had ruled in the favor of News Corp, okay, and against the Indian party, okay. And he said they hadn't seen that kind of confidence in systems elsewhere. Now, of course, News Corp has lots of money to spend on lawyers in the Indian Supreme Court, which startups generally don't. Yeah. So it's a long answer to your question, Michael, but really it's about trust first and contracts second. I have known Indian partners to go way beyond what the contract required them to do numerous times. And they've done it out of loyalty and out of faith and out of trust. Okay. And that's, if you have the right partner, that's what's going to happen.